And we are live. Hello, man.
What's going on?
Just taking a sip of what you're drinking. Tea, beer, coffee?
Black coffee, the most alpha version of coffee. Zero sugar.
And have you just done lifting weights for 2 hours before we started this? And then meditated for 4 hours?
Yeah, man. It's 2 o'clock here, so it's been 6 hours. So I'm done with my morning routine. I can get started now.
Oh, so you've been up since 2 a.m. or something this morning then?
Yeah. Yeah. No, my morning routine's not as hardcore as it used to be.
Yeah.
I fell down a rabbit hole like everyone else when I started actively, with self-improvement.
I did the same. I did. Have you read the book by Gay Hendricks, the morning miracle, or the miracle morning or something?
I've never even heard of it.
It's
what's that?
It's a book pretty much about morning routines. And when I was first getting into self-development, probably about 4 or 5 years ago, I read that and I was like, oh my God, I need to change everything. I need to get up at 4:30 a.m. And I started getting up at 4:30 a.m. And then I need to journal every morning, and I started doing that. And then I was like, I need to do a workout every morning. And then slowly I've realized a lot of that was ridiculous.
Yeah, but I think, to be optimistic, the long-term effects of having gone through that period for a month or two is worth it. Like, just the idea now that you can wake up an hour early and meditate, or whatever, work out for a bit. Even if it's just for like 30 minutes to an hour, you're still way better off than people who basically, when I worked in corporate, right, my entire life was just a reaction.
Yeah.
So you wake up, you don't have a plan, client phone call, you're in a state of chaos, and next thing you know, your boss is calling you. Next thing you know, your manager's calling you. You're not doing anything with intention. You're just reacting to everyone else throughout the entire day, and you're just basically in a state of survival from the time you wake up to the time you fall asleep. Whereas, as much as we make fun of the morning routines, it kind of gets your mind in a state of, okay, I need to live my life proactively. Even if it means just getting one thing done, and that's it, you're still way ahead.
I completely agree with you. I'm not shitting on it at all. It just got, and I think everybody
ridiculous.
Yeah, I think everybody goes through this process. When I first started to look into, I started reading a load of self-improvement books, and I finally made the decision I'm going to change things, and you get obsessed with it. And it became a point where in my life, I don't know if you found the same, where I was almost obsessing over all of the routines and all the meditation and reading the books, and I was obsessing over all of the theory behind the things, which became a bit too much.
Yeah, it gets to a point where, how do I explain it? I remember when I was traveling, right? When I was younger, I did like a big backpacking trip around the world for literally for about 12 months. And back then, you would meet a lot of travelers, and I used to call them checklist travelers, where they would meet another traveler and they would immediately go, "What countries have you been to?" "Well, I've been to this," and it became like a game of, "Oh, well, I've been to this many countries, and you've been to that many countries, and I speak this many languages," and it's like, you're missing the entire point. The point is not to see as many countries in as little as time as possible. The point is to expand your mind and get out of your bubble.
Mm.
And I think it's a similar psychology with the morning routines, where the entire point of the morning routine is that it gets you in a state of mind to live your life actively. It's not about trying to be as perfect and as hardcore as possible.
Mm.
I remember there was one point when I was doing it where I literally had a checklist of like 10, 5, 10
Me
things,
too.
and
Me
I
too.
would cross it off because I couldn't remember them.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, what the fuck's the point of like having a checklist?
Yeah.
Um, I should be able to do this effortlessly, and it should help energize me, not stress me out about, oh fuck, I missed this, or I didn't do that perfectly.
That's exactly where I got to. I had a checklist of 10 things that I did. And bearing in mind I was getting up at 4:30 a.m. So I had this massive checklist of things that I'd got done. And by 7 a.m. I'd not even started work at this point. By 7 a.m. I'd done all these things, and honestly I felt amazing. But it got to the point where it started overwhelming me, and I started going off the other side of it, where I started to feel anxious and overwhelmed by the ridiculous amount of things that I'd made myself do on a morning. And I still do a couple of them. I think the biggest thing I try to do is, well, get enough sleep. That's the biggest one for me. I get 8 hours sleep a night, and if I go to bed late, I get up late. I've got that flexibility, which is cool. And then the other thing is try and this is something that I heard recently worded like this. I didn't word this, and I can't remember who said it, but they said try and do something for yourself before you go and do something for somebody else. So whether that's go for a walk, whether that's create something, whether that's write, whatever that means to you, I found the way of putting that really powerful, and that's probably the things that I've kept.
Yeah, I like that a lot. You know what I was just thinking, man? The people who recommend and who write these like morning routines, people like Tim Ferriss, and no diss against Tim Ferriss. I love Tim Ferriss. But they're like people who have they have their shit together already, and they're like recommending a path in hindsight.
Yeah.
So it may I don't think they do this with bad intention, but I think they've forgotten what it's like to be a beginner.
Yeah.
So if I'm like a multi-millionaire, I have a staff, I have an assistant, I have my business taken care of. I already have the health habits of working out and eating right. Then it's very easy for me to write a book and be like, oh, this is the perfect plan. Trust me, I have my shit together. But the thing is, when you're starting at the beginning and you've got, and a lot of people who read these books are starting from scratch to get their life together. You only really need to like start with one thing, like whether that's building a new business or working out when you've never worked out before. That's all you really need to see the light, and then you just slowly add to that. But I think a lot of guys, what they do is they go, all right, I want to go from 0 to 100. So obviously, I need to live my life as if I were someone at 100 already.
Yeah, for me, I've got an obsessive personality. So when it comes to anything, whether it's improving or whether it's learning a new skill or whatever it is, I go all in on it 100%. And I did the same with the self-improvement stuff, and I went from being super unhealthy in every way that you could think of to almost overnight trying to do everything, running a mile a day, lifting weights every day, reading books every day, and just going all in. And I think we've all got a bit of a tendency to do that, haven't we? Because we want to see the changes quicker than they're ever going to happen. It's just human nature, really.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it kind of like somewhat connected to the whole perfectionist mentality that's implanted in us from the time we're in school. You have to be a straight A student. You have to freaking I went to a very academic school, so it was you gotta get straight A's. You gotta do well in sports. You gotta do some sort of drama or music, some sort of cultural thing. It just becomes too much.
Mm. Where did you kind of start waking up to? Where was the cut-off point for you? For me, it was probably 6 or 7 years ago now, where I woke up one day and I just said, right, I'm overweight and I need to change things. What was there kind of a point in your life where you?
So like everyone else, it started from a place. How do I explain this? I'll go a bit deeper. So ever since I was a kid, like primary school age, like a little kid, I didn't know how to express it back then, but I always knew there was more to life than whatever normal is.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
yeah, yeah,
Like I always felt like this is just weird. Like you go to school and then I go straight to uni and then I like it. I know I looked around, everything just felt off to me, and I've always had that feeling since I was a kid.
that there was more, that there was something else there,
Yeah,
that you
yeah,
wasn't
I couldn't
aware of it.
express it because I was a kid,
Yeah,
right? I wasn't, you know, wasn't as smart as I am now, but I knew there was something else. That's all. And I remember having this feeling from a very young age. And then basically the whole self improvement thing became really obvious. I started looking for solutions on Google, like everyone else, around, I would say about a little over 10 years ago. I was just in a bad place, man. Like I hated my job. I was overweight and I didn't, I didn't understand the connection between physical and mental yet. I was very stressed out. I was suffering from anxiety.
mm,
I was very angry, but I didn't know that a lot of that was connected with my body because I was eating like shit and I was binge drinking I knew I was depressed. I mean, I don't say like I'm not like saying like clinically depressed, but the word I used was depressed because it would come around Wednesday and already be thinking about getting drinks on Friday evening.
mm,
Like that was that was the most exciting point of my life to go out and get smashed with my mates on a Friday night.
yeah.
And one day I was just like I was extremely I was hungover pretty much every Saturday morning throughout my 20s. And I just woke up one day. I was like, dude, I'm hungover like I was last week, but yet every week I keep doing this to myself. Why am I doing this to myself? And somehow I stumbled upon a blog called Bold and Determined. This is like a real old school self improvement blog. Have you ever read it?
Ivan Throne, is it?
No. So there's a guy called Victor
Oh,
Pride.
Victor Pride, yeah, yeah, yeah. I get them
Victor
mixed
wrote
up.
a blog called boldanddetermined.com.
I remember it. I remember it.
Fucking massive from like 2013 to 2015. Now we make fun of platitudes on Money Twitter nowadays because Money Twitter is quite advanced now. But back then, Victor was really the only guy on the planet that I know of before Cernovich came along that was talking about masculinity with a level of rawness that I had never heard of from in my life. Yeah, he was basically saying, go make your fucking money, go lift those weights, go eat your steaks, go talk to chicks. Like he was just very, very raw and masculine, and it was a voice back then. It was very, very new. Like
Yeah.
no one talked about that sort of stuff back then. Um, and honestly, that was the beginning, and that led me down a path, let's just say, of discovering other books, um, which then evolved to social media today.
So where did Twitter start with all that then? Did you start Twitter as you'd began your journey, or did you start Twitter later on?
So I've been on Twitter for a few years. I was the silent contributor back then. I think I started my Twitter account it doesn't really count. I've had Twitter since 2010,
Yeah.
but back then I wasn't engaging in any online conversation. I was just using it to follow the news. I'd check in every now and then. My favorite writers would tweet out the links to the latest articles, that sort of stuff. But then I think it was 2000 and what year is it? So last year, end of 2019, I saw Lawrence King was making some noise. This is how this is crazy. So Lawrence only had like 200 followers when I got on Twitter, and he was just getting a lot of engagement and getting a lot of traction. And he had a course back then called "How to Make $100 a Day on Twitter." I think that's what it was called, something like that.
Yeah.
And I sent him a DM, and I was just like, "Mate, like, what's the benefit of growing a Twitter account? I don't get it. Explain it to me." And he said, "Yeah, it's a good way to build an audience, and then you can monetize it in like 6, 12 months time if that's what you want." I told him my story, and he said, "That's a cool story, man. You should start building a brand around it." And the name, I used to have a blog way back when called waronweakness.com. Unfortunately, I lost the domain,
Oh man.
but I just thought it was a cool name. I don't know why I picked it. It came out of the blue. There's no special story about that. I know people always ask me like, was there some sort of moment? No, it just sounded cool to me, and I've had that at for a while. Um, and that was it, man. I just started, tweeting, sending tweets, and then engaging with people and getting really hooked. I was addicted to Twitter for like 6 months. Very, very addicted.
That's the secret of everybody on Twitter, isn't it? Everybody who's doing really well on Twitter, they all talk about having a really balanced life and things like that. And most of them are on Twitter like 23 hours a day with a Twitter addiction. We're just not admitting it. We've got a Twitter addiction, but we're not admitting it.
Bro, so it's not just a time thing. It's the perception of time. So what I did, in your phone, it tells you how much time you spent on an app per day.
Yeah.
So I went on once. This was like 6 months after I started building my account, and I had around 10, 12,000 followers at the time. And it was embarrassing. I think it was like accumulated of like 4 or 5 hours a day.
Wow. That's impressive.
But the thing is, in my mind, it felt like 1 hour.
Yeah.
That's the deceiving thing. And so it got to a point where I started using an app blocker. That's what I do now. I block it out for most of the day.
Yeah. It's because you're jumping in and out of it all day, isn't it? You might get a notification, then you jump in for 5 minutes, then you jump out, and then you might be stood, I don't know, waiting for something, and then you jump in again for 5 minutes, and then you jump out, and your day is completely ruled by jumping in and out of Twitter all day long.
Yes. So this morning, for example, I have like a morning setup where I give myself 20 minutes of Twitter.
Yeah.
Just to respond to comments. And I have so many followers now, it's impossible to respond to everyone within 20 minutes. So I hopped on this morning and I liked some tweets, I responded to some tweets, respond to a couple of DMs. And it felt like a minute and boom, app blocker just kicks me out. And I'm like, there's 20 minutes. Just just vanished like that. So I can totally understand how people are hooked on it. And I've seen accounts, I swear to God, they spend 8 hours a day on Twitter. They just have it open all day long.
Well, I remember seeing, God, how long ago is this now? Maybe 8 months ago, maybe a year ago. When Oliver Cantin started coming up? When he started getting lots of followers and he kept posting his Twitter statistics and he was posting like 10,000 tweets a month or something.
It was crazy, yeah.
But to be real, that is, if you want to grow quickly and you want to do it effectively, you want to reply to everybody, you want to be a well-rounded person on Twitter, that's what it takes, man. You can't in the beginning, if you want to grow it, you can't be just posting a couple of tweets a day and then jumping off. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people who are new to Twitter have this thing where I'm just going to be a Naval and tweet out,
Yeah.
some philosophical gem once a day, and it's going to get, millions of views. A, you're not Naval. B, you're not Naval. um, but yeah, dude, you gotta engage. I heard a very interesting podcast between a guy who I follow called David Perel.
Yeah, I
I
know
don't know if you
David.
know him.
Yeah.
So David, he did a podcast with Anthony Pompliano, the
Pomp.
Bitcoin guy. Pomp, yeah. So I don't know what his exact background is, but he used to work at Facebook.
Right.
And on this podcast, he said there's no way you can guess the algorithm. The way you can get fast engagement is just to overwhelm the algorithm. And by that he meant, as you said, just become a content producing machine. I mean, that guy's a machine. He tweets. He's got a podcast. He's got like a YouTube mini podcasting he does with his wife. He's got a newsletter. Um, he's basically just a one man media production.
Yeah. And for most people, that's tough to swallow because they think it comes back to this ease thing, how easy things are. You look at it and you think, oh, they look at War and Weakness account, for example, and they see the followers. And I've seen other people grow 10,000 followers in, I don't know, 2 months or something like that. And they think, oh, right, it's going to be easy. I'm going to be able to just grow 10,000 followers in 2 months. And the thing that most people don't realize is the thing that you just said. You are not Naval. You are not the person who grew 10,000 followers in 2 weeks. The majority of us are normal people where it just takes time, and it takes a long time, and you've got to be willing to put in that effort and the wrong effort for a long time and see it out of the other side. I found exactly the same thing. I've been on Twitter since 2008, and it's only February this year where I realized I'd just been using Twitter for fun as well. I'd just been following news or whatever. And it was only in February this year where I thought, right, I'm going to get off Twitter or I'm going to make it work for me. And for me, what that meant for me is that I looked around a little bit and researched a couple of things. And the thing that kept coming up was tweeting 10 times a day. And I'd seen Hype Fury at that point. So I signed up for a Hype Fury account. And then I started tweeting 10 times per day. That was my thing. So I just, and from February to now, I've tweeted at least 10 times a day. And in the very beginning, I was doing the same. I was trying to write the most perfect tweet, the kind of like really insightful, really motivational type tweets. And I spend so long trying to write these like perfect 10 tweets every day. And then every so often I'd write something stupid and suddenly that'd take off or I'd get loads of engagement. And then slowly as I came along over those months up until right today, right now, I've slowly realized that there's a balance to make between personality and useful content and shit posting, really. Just going on there and having a bit of a laugh and making friends. And there's that like really careful balance between all of those three things. And what's quite interesting about you with your War and Weakness account is that you used to be anonymous, didn't you? You was the Snake Plissken image.
Yeah, and there's days where I miss being Snake.
And that's one thing I really wanted to ask you about, because there's always this big discussion about anon versus semi-anon versus, not anon at all, where you're just yourself, which is like how I tweet. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that, because you've been switched over for a while now. What's kind of been the pluses and the minuses to that?
That's a great question.
Why did you do it in the first place, actually?
It doesn't sound like a big deal, but when I had Kurt Russell's Snake Plissken face up, I was a bit more detached from the content.
Yeah.
From what I was writing. So I try and be as authentic as possible. But when I had the snake face up, there was a part of me that felt like I was playing a character.
Yeah.
And what I realized was, and this is why I made the switch, after you write a certain amount of tweets, you can only fake it so much. Like, I don't know how people who run full anon accounts and just tweet like rewritten motivational posts all day long. I don't know how
Yeah.
they do it. They
I
either
don't.
use a bot or they're psychopathic. Like,
They,
I can't.
they
I
delete
can
their old
only.
tweets. They delete their old tweets and just retweet, just tweet them again.
There you go. So once I put my face up, I felt I was a bit more careful with what I wrote because I was like, well, now it's really me, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
And I felt what I was writing afterwards came out a bit more authentic. Might be a little psychological trick there, but yeah, that was the reason why I did it because I didn't want to. I wanted to sort of like take off another layer and be a bit more authentic with my audience,
I think it's
and
interesting.
it felt like a relief.
Yeah.
It was like a nice relief.
Have you seen an uptick or a downtick in followers because of it? I know it's tough to say because they're different time periods and we've had the US election and stuff like that,
Uh,
but
there was a small uptick, but then afterwards was definitely a big time downtick.
yeah.
But I think that's good because I think maybe I'm getting better quality followers.
Yeah. I think so.
That's how I justify it. That's how I justify it anyway. Because I feel like a lot of the if an account's growing like way too fast, it's usually a couple of things. The optimistic side is they're just the content is phenomenal. Um, or it could be they're in multiple engagement groups. Or it could be their content is just very very dumbed down because you have to remember Twitter, like any other social media, it's um it's optimized for sort of like normal people, right? And normal people like very very simple basic content.
Yeah.
And I think that hurts a lot of people's egos on money Twitter because Twitter is like it's like a very very high IQ bubble within the Twitter sphere, and people hate it when your tweet is too generic or it's too platitude because it's kind of like you're shitting on their intelligence. At least that's the vibe I get.
Yeah. I think you're right, but I think I have a theory about the anon versus being yourself thing.
Yeah, what's that?
And I think so two sides to it. So the first side is when you're an anonymous account, it's very well, I won't say very easy, but it's much easier to grow an anonymous account because people don't feel obliged to follow or people don't feel obliged to stay because it's an anonymous account. They think it's content, and it is at the end of the day. It's all content. So it feels like they're following a news organization or a blog or whatever. They don't feel like they've got to like the person because it isn't a person. It's a content medium, really. It's a stream of content. So I think from that point of view, with an anonymous account, you can get followers easier because people don't feel obliged to follow. They just follow for the content. But then the downside of that is that if you want to start selling anything or anything big or anything high ticket, it can be difficult to sell that because you've developed a brand almost. It's a company, really. There isn't a face to it. It's hard to sell high ticket stuff. I'm overgeneralizing here, but you know what I mean. But the downsides of that is that because it's easier to get followers, I do think they're lower quality followers and they only see you as a disposable resource. Once your tweets get crap, they stop following you.
Yes.
But when
I definitely agree with that last point.
yeah, but when it's you, they're following you because it's you. And
Mm,
the thing I always think about is Kevin Kelly's 1000 True Fans article. Have you read it?
mm. Yes,
Yeah,
a few times actually. Funny you brought it up because I was actually going through my archive. I have a Instapaper account,
yeah.
and one of the first articles I archived was that particular article. But go on.
It's fantastic, and it basically sums up the idea that the most optimistic and optimized way of building a following is to get 1,000 true fans. You don't need to take over the internet. You don't need millions of followers. You only need 1,000 true fans that will buy everything you make, follow everything you do, and they basically love you. That's the idea. And I don't think you can really build true fans, 1,000 true fans, when it's an anonymous account, because people don't know who you are. They don't know.
Yeah,
They don't know your face for a start.
I see what you mean. I think for an anonymous account to grow the 1,000 true fans, as you said, is the way you write has to have a signature to it.
Mm.
So I can't think of any examples. So this is not a good example, but there's an account that the guy who runs Tell Your Son This,
Yeah.
Tell Your Son This, Tell Your Son. So he went viral for a while because he finished his tweets with Tell Your Son This, and that became a meme. So he became known for that.
Yeah.
If that's the only way as an anonymous account you can get that sort of fan base is when you have that for lack of a better word, USP, right? Whether in your within your content.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're not non-anon, it's kind of like you're a face, you have a name. It's a lot easier to be unique and stand out.
And I think the other thing for me as well, when I started taking it seriously, a big point for me is I wanted to feel like I had skin in the game, that it was me, that I was held to a level of something, so I couldn't get away with just tweeting bullshit. I had to, it's me, and people know me, and a bunch of my followers back then were my friends, and some of them still are, so they know me and they know who I am. So it holds you, or for me at least, it feels like it holds you to a higher level of what you need to say and what you need to do.
Definitely. Yeah, there's definitely there's advantages to both. I actually do remember now that I've been thinking for a while, one of the other reasons why I decided to go anon at the beginning was because I thought it would be harder for the reason I just pointed out, in that for you to succeed, in my opinion, you have to be a lot more creative. Because when you're a non-anon, there's a lot of little hacks can do. Like there's a lot of like lifestyle hacks, even whether that's real or not, up to the person. But there's a lot of like, it's a lot easier to flex, let's just say, when you're a non-anon, if you choose to go down that path.
Well, I think the other thing as well, I think you're right, it's harder in some ways, because when you're a completely anonymous account, you're building a brand up from scratch. You have to decide all of those things, of the things you're going to tweet, the ways you're going to tweet them, and all of that stuff doesn't come naturally to some people, the whole branding side of it and the marketing stuff, especially if they've never done that kind of thing before.
Yeah. I don't know if you follow many of them, but there's a lot of anonymous accounts outside of Money Twitter that are just hilarious based on a particular theme.
I follow a few. I follow one called People Selling Mirrors.
See, that just cracks me up, just the name.
And it's just photos of people trying to sell mirrors and trying to take photos of mirrors without them being in the mirror.
And let me guess, it's got like hundreds of thousands of followers.
Oh yeah.
And every tweet gets viral. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And then there's
with those accounts is that like you said, you know exactly what you're getting with that.
Yeah, and I think that's where anonymous accounts can appeal to people. They know exactly what they're getting. For a long time, Naval's Twitter account, I thought I thought that was anonymous. I didn't know who Naval was. I thought it was just an account
Oh.
called Naval. I didn't even know he was a person until somebody actually said to me, they said Naval Ravikant, and I was like, "Who's Naval?" Oh, there we go. Now it's clicked. I felt like the dumbest guy in the world that I never realized. But it's because of his style of tweeting to a point as well that it is very impersonal. The way that he tweets, and it's
Yes.
always the same style of tweet, and they're always bangers as well. Every single tweet's amazing. He doesn't show any of his personality on there. It is just good tweet after good tweet.
Yeah, you can tell he really. Yeah, I mean he's a smart guy. What can I say? A great writer.
Well, he said, I'm reading his book of Naval, the Almanac of Naval at the minute. Have you read it?
I have not. So what exactly is that? Is that just someone commenting on or organizing all of Naval's thoughts into one place?
So the structure of it is Naval's got a podcast and he tweets a lot. So it's all collected together. Apparently it took Eric Jorgensen a couple of years to collect it all together. So it's all of these ideas collected together. And as far as I can tell, a lot of it is transcribed from the podcasts, and some of it is actually written by Naval as well as extra pieces. So it's all knitted together like it's been written by Naval. So it doesn't feel like you're just reading a load of his tweets. It's actually a really good book, and it's all knitted together into chapters that make sense.
Okay.
It's a fantastic book, and it's really easy to read as well because of the nature of where the content came from. So because it's come from tweets and short podcasts and stuff like that. But there's a section in that where he's talking a little bit about his routines and his definition of happiness and wealth and things like that. And I think this is why he writes good tweets, because he talks about just sitting and doing nothing and thinking. So he spends an hour or 2 hours a day he's got the ability to do this now. He's made his money, but his ability to sit and just think and just sit there, basically, and think. That's the thing that a lot of us don't have in our lives. We don't have the space in our lives if we've got a job and that, and we've got family or friends or whatever. It's hard for us to find that time to just sit and think. And
this goes back to exactly what I was just talking about before, right? Where, it's very easy for Naval, angel investor, multi-millionaire, to say, "Oh yeah, meditate for an hour a day." I mean, if you're like, I mean, I don't have any kids, and my life feels like I have enough to do my whole day to stay occupied, right? So I can't imagine someone who's got 2, 3 kids, a mortgage to pay off, a 9 to 5 job, plus commute, with all those responsibilities, and telling him to like go find an hour to meditate in a day. It's just unrealistic, right?
yeah, it is. But the other thing about Naval as well, he's at the point now where if you look at his tweets, he doesn't tweet that much. He might tweet one tweet every couple of days, or a couple of tweets if he gets inspired. He's at the point now, this comes back to the thing about wanting to be a Naval. He's at the point now with, where's he got, 1 million followers, something like that. He's at the point where he can tweet every couple of days, and that's enough. But if he was to start the Naval account again tomorrow, his one tweet every couple of days and not interacting with anybody wouldn't be anywhere near enough to build 1 million person following. He was the anomaly in the middle of it all somewhere.
Yeah. And I have no idea how long he's been on Twitter for. I suspect he's been on Twitter for a while.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's been on quite a long time, and he's always had that unique style, and always tweeted like that, and he was there tweeting platitudes really when other people weren't tweeting platitudes. And I know they're not quite platitudes, but they are the kind of generalistic advice that can be applied to anything, where you work out how you want to apply them. Song lyrics, basically. But for some reason, when he writes them, you listen and they seem more powerful than when other people write them.
Yeah, man. I have to give him respect though, because it seems like this has been happening for like the last month or so, where I've read an Naval tweet, and I'm like, "You bastard! I thought that thought 3 days ago." But
Yeah.
he beat me to it. But that just goes to show you how switched on he is. Um, and I think that's the sign of of someone who's very very intelligent, when you can. Because when I read good books, when I read great books, it's always stuff that I've felt, but I haven't been able to convey in words
Yeah.
until I read that particular passage or whatever.
I think what it shows as well with that thing on Twitter, I heard someone say this before as well, that when you use Twitter, it is basically a mind machine. And if you follow the wrong people, you are getting your mind altered by the wrong people. And when you read and consume their tweets, a couple of days later, you find you're writing tweets the same way as that they were writing tweets about the same kind of stuff. And you see it a lot when a tweet gets quite popular. You might write a tweet and then a load of other people write a tweet about the same topic. Not the same tweet, but around the same topic, because they've read it and they've seen it in their timeline over and over and over. And you kind of go around in this big loop of an idea orgy, really, on Twitter, where you say the same things.
The other thing I find fascinating about Twitter is, are you familiar with the Mimeticism, the Rene Girard mimetic theory?
I know what they are, but I'm not familiar with the theory.
So Rene Girard was a, how should we call him, writer, philosopher, teacher.
Yeah.
He's dead now. But he came up with the theory of Mimeticism, which is that we don't have any true desires. We desire what someone else desires. And that's all you have to understand. I'm not going to go into it because it's quite deep. But basically, like, you know, you and I are mates. I don't really give a shit about cars, but we're in a group of mates and everyone else wants a car. And now I want the same car because you all won't shut up about the fucking car.
Yeah.
So now I automatically want the car because I see that you want the car.
Yeah.
So, and I think this is interesting because I've seen this play out on Twitter, where let's say your goal is to grow an account to fucking, I don't know, 10,000 followers, and your goal is to monetize your Twitter account. Well, what's going to happen is after a few months of spending time on Twitter, you start seeing other accounts do it successfully, and now you want what they have. That's what's causing all these, you see a lot of these people on Twitter complaining about Twitter growth guides. That's exactly what's happening. One person had success with it, and then another account had success with it, and now all these new accounts come up, and they all want to have success and the same leverage and the same thing, and they all just end up copying each other. And that's just a little example of this mimetic theory playing out. If you want to learn more about it, follow my boy Benjamin George. Do you follow Benjamin?
I do, yeah.
Spanish guy. So he writes a lot about mimetic theory, and I haven't spoken to him directly about this, but I'm sure he would agree with me.
He's a Spanish guy with a British accent.
Yeah, I thought he was English for ages, and then I saw he had the Spanish flag in his name, and I was like, "What the fuck?" So I went on his website and I figured out the story.
Yeah, it's kind of the same way. I went through this a little bit with my girlfriend. I've been going out with my girlfriend for 15 years. We've been together a long time, and a couple of years back, maybe 5 or 6 years back, she started to want to get married really bad, and I said at that point, we either get married or we go to Disney World. And we went to Disney World, and that put the conversation off for a year. And then after that, I spoke to her about it again. And I said, look, I'm not avoiding getting married at all. It's just a big expense, all this kind of thing. We've been together a really long time. I don't personally think it makes a difference. But if you really want to get married, that's cool. We'll get married. And we got into this conversation about it, and basically it all comes down to the fact that all her friends are getting married. Everybody around
Mm-hmm.
her is getting married, and she's seeing these
Mm-hmm.
posts on Facebook all the time.
Yep.
And I'm like, that's all that's happening here. Let's leave it a little bit and see if you still want to get married in a year's time or whatever, when all these posts have disappeared, and
Yeah.
let's deal with it then. But it's exactly the same thing. It's most of our lives are dictated by that. How do you separate the things that you actually truly want versus the things that you think you want, even though it's just because your friends have got it? That's really hard. That.
Yeah. Yeah. And the most painful thing is you think you want that thing because based on mimetic desire, then you get it and you're happy for like one day.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how many times this has happened to me. This has happened to me so many times. I mean, the biggest example of that in my personal life was when I got my first big corporate role. Like I was very, very career driven in university. My dream was to basically get a job at like Goldman Sachs and become like this sexy ass banker, like in like the guy in American Psycho.
Yeah.
I wanted to be like that. I wanted suits. I wanted the the money, the cars, etc.
Did
And
you?
once I got a job in like a very very big firm, and within like a couple of months, I was like, this is not what it's kept up to be. Like this is shit. I'm not happy. I'm not any happier than I was 2 years ago. And it's painful because in that example, I worked really hard in uni to get there. Well, at least in my mind, I worked really hard, and I invested a lot of 3 5 years of my life into that. And then when I got there, I was like, this is not making me happy.
So what did you
I
do?
mean, that's sorry.
What did you do?
Well, I immediately formed a plan to quit within 12 months, and that's exactly what I did.
Yeah.
Um, but it took me. I mean, it's just I feel bad because my parents are quite traditional and they're Asian, so Asian parents. This is not controversial at all, but they want their kids to work in the most prestigious firms and to have the most prestigious jobs.
Got to be a doctor or a lawyer or an
Um,
accountant or whatever.
Doctor, lawyer, accountant, engineer, anything in the STEMs, really.
Yeah.
Um, but it's hard for me to explain my mom because she came from like abject poverty. So to
Yeah.
her, job security is a luxury,
Yeah.
you know. But to me, um, it's like I'm one of those guys. I hate being told what to do. I really don't like it. And in corporate, you basically have to pretend to be someone you're not in order to sort of like progress up the chain of command, up the hierarchy.
You've got to be an anonymous Twitter account all the time, man, for 8 hours a
Yeah,
day.
exactly. And it drives me. It's just like yeah. The moment when I decided to quit was when I realized this is no.
I think that the secure job thing's quite interesting, because I have this conversation with some friends, because I've got some friends who are in corporate jobs, and I run my own agency, so I'm self-employed effectively. I've got no job security really. If everything
Yeah,
went wrong, I'd be out of a job tomorrow. But they all think that they're safer somehow because they work for somebody. They think they're safer. And I hope to a lot of those people that this year with COVID has made them realize that they aren't any safer. In fact, if anything, because they're not in control of their destiny, they're not safe at all. The thing I always explain to them, look, if I'm going to lose my job and I make my own job, if I'm going to lose my job, I know I'm going to lose my job 12 months in advance. You don't know you're going to lose your job until the very last second, because they won't tell you. They'll keep you working right until the very last second, and then they'll tell
yeah,
you in 1 week to go, we're getting rid of you, we can't afford you. Where's the security in that?
yeah, man. So I worked in I worked in bankruptcy. Okay, corporate bankruptcy. That
Yeah.
was my specialty back in the day. But we were in the same department as the transactions guys, the M&A guys, and I was working there in the midst of the 2008 2009 financial crisis.
Yeah.
And so I watched half of my colleagues lose their jobs within like a week. I think everyone was just getting made redundant because their jobs were just completely unnecessary. There was no transactions being made in that climate. Um,
And it's
and these are
scary.
people who pride themselves on being loyal to the firm and being a team player,
Mm.
and then they get sacked, but the bosses still get their bonuses.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
Well, I think the biggest thing that people like that realize is, especially this year, this kind of year, where you think that the security is in just joining another firm. You think, that they'll take the risk and they'll employ me. But in a year like this, where you lose your job, there might be no industry left. There might not be any other company you could go work for because nobody's hiring right now because of the crazy shit we're living through. So
yeah,
you quickly realize that everything you've kind of invested into this company mindset of working for somebody else where you think it's safer, it just isn't. And the safest thing to do is build the skills of a self-starter, of an entrepreneur, where you can just turn your hand to an opportunity and have all the skills around you to be able to start that and make money from it, more importantly.
yeah, exactly. I think that's a scary thing for most people, right? And I jump back and forth. Sometimes I'm very, very empathetic to people who have jobs, and sometimes I'm like, man, you need to like wake up to the reality of what it is. I'm not against having jobs.
No, me neither.
I think the job's great. What I'm against is people not knowing the reality of what that entails.
Yeah. I'm not against it at all. And the conversations I have with friends are usually against me. They think I'm risking things. But I've run a design agency for 10 years. There's really no risk left. We
Yeah,
aren't
yeah,
we aren't going to go bust tomorrow. But I still get it now, even from my parents, where they see me and they
oh
go,
yeah,
"So how's business? Are you making money?" And I'm like, "Mum, I've been doing this for 10 years. I
yeah,
I'm not. I'm okay. You don't need to still be asking me
yeah.
how's
My
business."
mom asks me like every couple of weeks, like it's sales are still good. Like you still got clients? Well, as if like I had like a lucky streak.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? But I can understand from that generation. There must be, especially for someone like you, because you work in design, you can effectively work from home as long as you have a computer.
yeah. And also
But
my
for your,
go on.
it must be weird for your parents to be like, all Craig does is like fucking sit around in his pajamas and play on the computer all day. How is he paying his bills?
Yeah,
That's probably what they're seeing.
it is. It is. It's exactly what it is. And um, I think, and they see me doing potentially stupid shit online and not seeing the connection with the dots of how it all links together. And
Yeah,
the biggest thing that they don't understand, and most of my friends don't understand either, is I know I'm sat at home and I'm getting Gumroad notifications for things that I've made, and I'm making money while I'm having a beer with them, and they're like, I do not get this at all, and you feel like some kind of fucking wizard, and you've got this secret power to bring money out of the air whilst you sat having a beer, and they just do not understand it at all.
yeah. I've tried to sort of like broach the topic with a few friends of mine because I have a friend here who he's a teacher, and I've been trying to like get him to sort of like to start instead of because he teaches at a university.
Yeah,
And I said, you're a very talented teacher. You could, if you started like a social media account, YouTube channel, and you start promoting yourself, you could get private students who pay you in US dollars, and they will pay you a fuck ton more
Yep.
without having to go through, because he's always complaining about his boss. Like, you don't have to have a boss. You can set up this landing page. I showed him like this template I have on card I built, and he was just like, "Man, I don't want to scam anyone."
Yeah.
And I could just tell from the way he answered me that he's not ready,
Yeah. I
because everything I bring up, he's gonna argue with me.
I
So it's like,
I
well,
I had that mindset as well until February this year. I felt exactly the same, that it was a scam, and I can't make a thing and sell it online. Bearing in mind, I run a design agency and we make e-commerce websites for people who sell things online. I'm very aware of the whole thing, and I understand the whole thing very, very well. But when it came to me, I felt like I was scamming people if I sold anything. And
yeah,
it was only coronavirus that made me really sit up and take notice, where I were like,
well,
because I didn't know when it all hit and we went into hard lockdown in the UK. I was like, am I going to have a business next week? I didn't know that, and nobody else knew that, because everything just shut down so quickly. All businesses shut down. You couldn't get hold of anybody. We went into crisis mode. And I really had a period of reflection where I thought, if I lose Genius Division tomorrow, I've got nothing. I could go work as a designer for somebody else pretty quickly, but I'm not earning anything from things I've built already or already made. And I'm not turning any of these skills to anything that I could turn them to. And that was the point right there and then where I thought, I need to try, at least just try and make something online. And I'd already had a book that I'd written a couple of years ago that wasn't even about design. It's like self-improvement, kind of my journey through self-improvement. And I had the book and I just stuck it on Gumroad, and I joined around the same time, joined the Visualize Value community, and there was a ton of people in there all doing the same thing. And I thought, fuck it, I'm going to do it. I'm going to stick it online and sell it. And I still felt like a fraud for a long time after that I'm selling this thing, and I feel fake for selling it because I don't see any value in it, and I feel like a fraud and I feel like a scam. And then over time, when you've done it for a while, I think you start to get over it. But it does take a long time, especially for me as well, being from the UK and from the area that I'm from, a small town, with that small town mentality and the thing people in the UK don't promote themselves. It's hard to get over
yeah,
that. That's the biggest step to get over.
yeah. The whole self promotion thing. Um, well, if you think about it, it's just not like normal, right? Like, if you have like a
No.
somewhat normal, upbringing, I mean, I'm just thinking off the top of my head. I don't really know. I know one guy from school who was like really hardcore, just a natural salesman.
Yeah.
But apart from him, it was sort of like shunned upon to sell, and especially to sell yourself.
Yeah. And so that means that you have to break out of your friends that you've got around you. And
Yeah,
that takes guts, man. That takes a lot of guts to. I'm still friends with everybody, but it takes guts to step out in front of them and say, "Look, I'm doing this thing," and they're all saying, "Yeah, you're a fucking scam. What are you doing? This is ridiculous." And it takes courage to do that, which sounds ridiculous. You're only selling a PDF on Gumroad. There's no courage involved whatsoever. You're not going to war or anything, but it takes a lot of courage to step out from the normal relationships you have in your life to do it.
yeah. I think any type of sales, right? Whether it's selling a PDF on Gumroad, or I don't know, opening up a juice bar in the corner and selling juice. Like, you send it, you take, especially if you have no experience with sales, you you take it, like, people take it personally, right?
Yeah.
they see the no to the product as a no to them, um, which is weird. I don't know why that is, but people do feel that way.
Yeah, it's the same in design. I've been a designer for 15 years, and when you first become a designer and you get your first client and they don't like what you've done, you feel like they've just shit on your face. But
Yeah,
it's not you. It's just, it's the work.
yeah, and especially when there's a financial transaction involved, because no one likes to feel like a scammer, especially if you're getting paid.
Yeah, and that's the hardest part. So you went from corporate to being a writer. How has that transition been? Has that been freeing? Do you finally feel like you've found yourself? Is this it where you're at now?
Um, I'm grateful every day that I don't have to wake up to an alarm clock. I think that's the best thing.
Yeah.
And I think you might have a similar thing where when you work for yourself, um, I don't know, it's equally stressful as it is free because
Mm.
on one hand you've got no one to support you, right? That's the thing about corporate. Like even when you're in, even if it's a false sense of security, you have like your colleagues to like fall back on, to sort of like share the stress. Whereas when you're on your own, you're freelancing like me, um, there's a small part of you, and it slowly dissipates as you do it for longer. There's always a small part of you like, oh, is the dream over? Because it does. There are days where I look at my old corporate friends and I look at my lifestyle, and I feel I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for being able to do what I do that it just doesn't feel real.
I found the same when we started. I went from doing design for other people to starting up for myself for freelancing. Basically, I started an agency with somebody else. There was two of us from the very beginning, and the leap right there was tough because I'd always been employed by other people, and we had £2,000. I tell this story all the time. We had £2,000, and we said, right, is this it? Are we going to quit? And we didn't have any responsibilities. I was 21. Business partner was 23 or 24 or something. We had no responsibilities. We lived at home, but it was still a big decision, and we did it. And then when we did it, we were like, well, if we run out of money, we'll just go get another job. It's as easy as that. Every month, and this is the way that I framed it for myself, and I still frame it this way now. Every month that you can successfully work for yourself is like 10 months of experience of working for somebody else. So
I like that.
by the time you've done it for 5 years, you've actually got 10 years experience, and not just in the job, not just in the skill, which you're doing every day anyway, but in the client management, in the accounts, in the running everything yourself. You build up all these extra skills that you just don't build as an employee. And then it becomes the point where you've been doing it for so long. Like, I've been doing it for 10 years. If I lost my job tomorrow, I could just walk into an agency and say, look, I've ran my agency for 10 years. Do you want all this experience? It'd be so easy. So you still have the fear of not having money, because obviously you don't want to get to that position. But it becomes like a tipping point where you're earning way more experience than you ever would in just a corporate job.
Yeah, and it's also all the soft skills associated with that, I
Yeah.
think. I mean, to do what you and your friend did, right, at age 21 to decide to go on your own, that takes a lot of balls, man. And it might not seem like a big deal to you because you've been doing it for 10 years, but like most people would not even think about that. I remember when I was in uni and I was applying for my first jobs and I wasn't getting the calls back. I thought my life was over, man. Like that's how weak I felt. That's how reliant I was on the job. And all my friends felt the same way. We're like, man, if we don't get a job offer within the first 6 months of leaving uni, we're fucked. Like we're like, this is over because we had no experience. We had, you know, we were fresh out of uni, and so that's where your mindset is. Like, if you can't get a job, then you're completely fucked.
Yeah.
And that's what's good about entrepreneurship. Like you prime yourself to think not of your resume, but of your skill sets.
Yeah, and you build up this crazy skill set that I mean, I'm now at the point where I couldn't even put my skills into one bucket, because on an average day, I might be having a client meeting, then I'm doing some design, and then I'm sorting something else out, and then I'm doing this and doing that, and then I might be doing some social media over here, and then I might be doing this other crisis thing for a client, and then we might be talking about payment gateways with another client, and you get this like crazy experience in so many different pots of things, where you just become this crazy like polymath thing that you can't explain to anybody, that's so powerful, that when you're working for somebody else, they employ you on day one to be X, and then on day 10,000 you are still X. You're an experienced X, but you're still X and not Y. Whereas when you work for yourself, you are the full range of the alphabet by the time you get there.
Yeah, I was so I got a good story to tell you. So I have a friend who this is why I say not all jobs are bad. I had this friend, I think it was either well, she's not really a friend, just the girl I met. It was either her, I think it was her parents actually. Yeah, I think it was her parents. Doesn't matter. Anyway, so the parents had like professional jobs. I think they were lawyers or something like that.
Yeah.
And they always had this dream of starting their own bakery. So they thought about all the upsides of going off on their own. They thought, oh, we're going to be our own business owners. We're going to be able to sell cakes. We're going to be friends with our customers. But they didn't think about the reality of what it means to run a business. Because here's what their whatever 10-hour day of working as a lawyer turned into like a 14, 16-hour day of running a bakery.
Yeah.
Because why? They had to hire employees. They have to pay the taxes. They have to deal with the plumber to fix whatever at the bakery. They have to bake the cakes. They have to do all this shit that people don't think about when you're working on your own, like doing your own taxes, finding contractors to fix specific problems, hiring people, firing people.
Yeah.
These are all like the non-sexy aspects of entrepreneurship that people don't really talk about. But that's like 70% of your day.
If you're lucky. I always tell anybody, a designer, they're like, if I used to teach on a web design course once a year for a couple of weeks, and they all used to want to be freelance straight away. And I used to say, what do you want to do? Oh, I want to be freelance. I want to be a freelance designer. I said, don't be a freelance designer. You'll do no design and you'll hate it. You need to go work for someone. Learn your skills on somebody else's time, because it takes a particular kind of person to be a successful freelancer. And if you want to do the skill and get very, very, very good at it, don't go do it for yourself, because you'll be spending 50 to 60% of your time doing the other things, and then you'll still have to do the skill.
Yeah, exactly. So this couple I talked about, according to the daughter or whatever, or the sister or whoever it was, they just they end up becoming more miserable than they were when they were in corporate.
Yeah.
Because they realized that running a mom and pop shop, like a brick and mortar business, like a local neighborhood business, that's your life. I know, because I have a few mates who own bars in Australia, and like they work 70, 80, up to 100 hours a week. Because when they're not running the bar, they're dealing with all the bullshit in the back end. You know what I mean? Like finding new suppliers, refurbishing the bar, whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, we look after some e-commerce websites, and that means that one of them could ring me right now if the website goes down. And I'm like, I've got to try and deal with that somehow. The buck stops with me. And
Yeah.
if you don't want that level of experience, that level of responsibility, then that's when it's cool to go work for someone else. And you've still got plenty of time. You could build a skill for 10 years, you know, go from 20 years old to 30 years old and build a skill on somebody else's time and then go freelance.
Yeah, I think the word you said is the most important one, which is responsibility. Like, so, with what's that thing that Jocko says? Discipline equals freedom.
Yeah.
I really like that because it's true. Um, the more freedom you have, the more responsibility you have.
Yeah.
The analogy I like to use always is with healthcare. I have the freedom that I don't have to worry about my health, but at the same time, I take on the responsibility of working out every day, not eating all the junk that I would love to eat. Not, I watched the show last night. There was nothing I wanted more than a bag of salt and vinegar crisps go along with the show, but I can't do it, right? Because I'm not 20 years old anymore.
Yeah.
And so, but that gives me the freedom of longevity and health. And
Yeah.
it's the same thing with business. Like, I want the freedom to be able to be myself and not have to fucking, you know, kiss someone's ass because he's higher up the hierarchy than I am. Well, then I'll have to, do that hour extra of work that I wouldn't have to do if I worked for someone else.
I'm going to leave it on that point.
Nice.
I'm not going to say anything more insightful than that. We've been going for an hour and 10. Wow. That was awesome, man. Everything that I wanted. Have you got any final things you want to say? Anything to plug?
Not really. Just everyone that's listening out there, stay strong. It's 1st of December today. Which means that people are starting to slack off. They're starting to feel that New Year energy. I know what that feels like, where you reflect on the year and think about how crap it is, and then, in 30 days' time, you're going to be a changed man. You're not going to be a changed man in 30 days' time. Start fucking changing yourself today.
Love it.